former colleague was in Ohio yesterday, Toledo and Cincinnati. You won Ohio by 21 points 4 years ago. The president won by 8.5, so you significantly outpaced him. What's your advice to your colleagues running on the ticket with President Trump? Because some of them are struggling, some of them are way ahead, but they all need advice.
Well, look, I don't think I can give much advice because every state is different. I would just say two things. One, I think it's important for all of our colleagues to talk about the importance of holding the Senate. I mean, this is unbelievable. If we lose the White House and lose the Senate and lose the House, the kinds of things that could happen to our country, the tax increases, the regulatory overreach, the lack of support for our military, and then some of the structural changes they're talking about, packing the court. I mean, it's unbelievable that after 150 years we would think about that. And then bringing on additional states where they're likely to be Democratic senators, and these are structural changes as well. So I think that's one thing to talk about is the fact that this is about the Senate majority, because there are about 11 seats in play as I see it, Hugh, and they all could be the majority maker seat. And then second is just being an independent voice for your state. I mean, as you know, I'm supporting Donald Trump. I'm a proud Republican, but Ohio's got particular issues, as does every state, and you got to stand up for that. I did a lot on my election about the opioid crisis because I had done a lot in the Senate on that issue to try to push back against it, and protecting the Great Lakes, which, you know, being a northern Ohioan is incredibly important for our state, and had taken the lead there and talked about that. So I think it's having issues that are important to your specific state. And so, look, that's the only advice that I would give them.
Now, I have one particular question about whether or not it makes sense to argue about the influence of seniority. I look at Susan Collins as a model senator like you. I think she may be the most influential senator in the upper chamber. And it's a close race. I think she'll win in Maine. But do you think voters understand how important seniority is in the Senate? How very, very important Susan Collins is to protecting Maine and Maine's interests?
I'm not sure, but it's a very good point. And I think what Susan can also talk about is just her effectiveness. You know, she is viewed as the most bipartisan senator by an outside survey group. She is someone who has accomplished a lot. She can look back on her career and just talk about her health care bill she's passed, what she's done for small businesses as chair of that committee, and what she's done for our veterans. So she's got a lot to talk about, and to say, you know, if reelected, I'll be able to go, hit the ground running and be able to continue to produce for Maine as compared to her opponent, who would be starting at ground zero.
So let's go to these structural changes, Senator. The first one and the easiest one is making the District of Columbia a state. I believe that's unconstitutional. I believe it was clearly anticipated the federal city would never be a state and would not be represented, but this would be a place, you and I are both inside the Beltway, a place where the government would sit, not actually have power beyond its collective power as a geographic point for the meeting of the government. Do your colleagues on the other side understand that? I mean, it's just that Puerto Rico can be a state. That's fine by me. It's just like Hawaii. You can have island states, but you can't make the federal city a state.
Yeah, I think the legal argument there is actually strong, and I think there's also overwhelming pressure on Democrats to try, and probably if they do away with the filibuster, which is the 60-vote margin you need for almost anything in the Senate today, if they take that down to 50 and they use that to bring in D.C., then I think it ends up in the Supreme Court, having gone through probably the district court and the appellate court, which might be interesting. But I think eventually the Supreme Court would probably rule in favor of the federal city, because, look, it is clear in the Constitution that they expected this to be the home of government, and not to be a state for all the right reasons, including not to have a conflict of interest, in fact, that this is the place where the government resides, and it's a relatively small area. So I do think that is one where we'd have a good legal argument.
Now let's turn to court packing, Senator. I have played tape this morning of your longtime colleague Joe Biden in 1983 and 1987 presenting a powerful case against court packing, and reminding people that when FDR brought it forward, he was rejected 70-20, turned it down, and he had 73 senators in his party or aligned with it, with the three progressive members, 73 Democrats, and yet court packing failed 70-20 because it's a fundamental destabilizing of the republic. Can you explain to me what are the Democrats thinking by not answering this question?
I think it's a mistake because I think more and more Americans are realizing that this is a massive overreach. And, we've had the nine justices in place for 150 years. And you're right, back in, I guess it was 1937, Roosevelt had just won an election overwhelmingly, and the New Dealers were in control. And he was upset because, the Supreme Court wasn't doing everything that he wanted. So he said, well, what the heck? I'm going to go ahead and make this next move. But I think Joe Biden said it pretty well back then. He talked about, the fact that this was unconstitutional and inappropriate, and also said that this saying that power corrupts and absolute power corrupts absolutely would apply to this case. And I think he was right then. He also said that those who voted against Courtpacking, who were among those 73 Democrats or New Dealers, showed extraordinary bravery, and he held them up as an example. So I think he was right then and is wrong now.
So, Senator, you represent Ohio well, except for your affection for the Bengals. And by the way, we didn't get to make our annual bet, and I would already won that. But hey, you got to like Joe Burrow. I mean, it's going to be quite the 20 years between Burrow and Baker.
He'll come around. He needs a better offensive line. But man, the Browns are 4-1 for the first time since 1994, since Bill Belichick was your head coach.
I know. It's a wonderful
congratulations.
thing. It's a wonderful thing. I almost drove to Cleveland last weekend because I got my season tickets. But I wanted to ask, you do represent the whole state. You do well. Has anyone ever approached you and asked you to expand the Supreme Court? I think this is such a profoundly unrepresentative issue, except for a slice of the hard left. So you've been doing this for 18 years or 20 years, whatever, congressman, senator, OMB director. Has anyone ever come up to you and said, we need to expand the Supreme Court?
No, because I think people view it as, changing the rules of the game because you can't win through the legitimate constitutional and legislative process. So people with their votes determine who is in the United States Senate and who's in the presidency, and they in turn appoint these and then in most cases confirm Supreme Court nominees. And that gives the voters the opportunity to weigh in, and that's the way it should be. And of course, that's the way our founders intended it. So I think that's how people, view this. I think this is a basic civics issue. And no, I've never had anybody say it. I have had a lot of people, and I'll probably hear it today again because I'm out about in Ohio, say that this just seems wrong somehow. This just doesn't feel right, and it seems like, as I said earlier, a massive overreach. So I don't think it's going to be helpful for the Democrats. I think Joe Biden, before this campaign is over, in the next few weeks, is going to have to come out with a strong position one way or the other. I hope the media finally starts asking him the question and forces him to make that decision.
So, Senator, my last question. You were a colleague and you are a friend of the former vice president, and everybody says Joe Biden's a nice guy. Why won't he answer the question? I mean, why dodge it? What is the upside of that?
Well, I don't know, Hugh. You're a better analyst than I am, but I suppose he's looking at the polls and thinking, I'm going to win. So why would I say that I'm for it and upset the majority of the American people, who would think that this is an overreach? And then why would I say no? And of course, that would upset my base because the Democratic Party is now led by a much more radicalized base that has the energy and enthusiasm. And so I think he sees it as a no-win politically. But there are lots of issues, where you have to take a position, where you have people on both sides who are not happy about it. And as a presidential candidate, he owes it to the voters. They deserve to know.
I agree with that. I hope he is asked, and I hope he finally gives an answer.